Hey Wargamers, it is the end of September. We just got a brand new balanced data slate, so what better time to revisit one of our favorite topics, offensive point efficiency, aka mathhammer. So if you haven't seen one of these videos before, this is basically a exercise where we are going to go through, calculate the average damage done for each unit in the codex per point for that unit against a variety of different targets, a bunch of kind of straw man profiles of, strength, toughness, save, invuln, and look at how you do, how much bang for your buck you get. Now, this is just a tool. It is not the answer for what you should bring, how you should use it, anything like that. It is just one way in evaluating unit selection. In a case where maybe you're choosing between a couple different options, you can select which one is the most efficient if that's the most important thing to you. So there's lots of other parts of being a successful player, but this is one tool that you can use to help craft a list that does what you want it to do. So a few points about how we're going to do this. One is that this is going to give us just kind of like a baseline efficiency for each unit. It's not going to take into account interactions like guiding or detachment enhancements, particular rules for the like specific target, things like that. This is just this unit against a kind of blank profile. Now, I do give a couple examples for what those units could be, but I don't take into account things like those particular units' abilities, for example. For each of these target profiles, I'm going to give you the top 7 efficiency units, and for each unit, I'm just going to give you the best performing option. So like if there's 3 different loadouts for that particular unit, I'm just going to list the one that does the best. That way we're not having a list that's all one unit, for example. But trust me, they were all included in the calculations. Now, last time we did this was a year ago. It's hard to believe, I know, but it's been a year. And since then, there's been a lot of small changes. There hasn't been like huge shifts in how things are pointed or how things have worked. Rule updates, for the most part, don't affect these calculations, with the exception of things like the recent Riptide update changing the strength. That does have an effect here, but more so like changes in the points. The points for different units is going to change how efficient different units are in these calculations. So with that in mind, it is time for us to look and see what's changed. Alright, so starting off with toughness 3, 5-up save with 1 wound. This is something like a guardsman. We have star size with flamers as our most efficient unit. Now, this is, again, the most efficient version of this as well. You see flamers and burst cannons, or just burst cannons, performing similarly, but less efficiently than just the pure flamer loadout. We have breachers with a fire blade. We have pathfinders with an ion rifle loadout. We see fire knives with missiles when the target is at full health. We see strike teams with a fire blade, Tiger Shark with a burst loadout, and then Vespid as our 7th most efficient unit against guardsmen. So a lot of the typical suspects here. I think one of the things that stands out is, the Tiger Shark showing up. The Tiger Shark shows up pretty frequently throughout this list, throughout this video. But keep in mind there are a lot of caveats to using a Tiger Shark, including things like just getting it on the board and maneuvering it. So take that with a grain of salt, right? This is instantaneous efficiency, assuming that everything has basically the same opportunity to act, and that is, we know that's not true, right? So keep that in mind. Next up, we have Eldar Guardians, so toughness 3, 4-up save, 1 wound. Again, breachers with a fire blade show up as our number 1, star size with flamer loadout, strike team with a fire blade, pathfinders with ion, fire knives with missiles, Tiger Shark, and Vespid. Again, a very similar list. We're just seeing the breachers and star size switch around, which again isn't a surprising thing. We see that breachers, star size are kind of our go-to units for anti-infantry, and that shows up here, right? That they are effective against infantry. Increasing the toughness a little bit, looking at Primaris, we have toughness 4, 3-up, and 2 wounds. Breachers, again, with a Fireblade, a really efficient unit. This isn't taking into account things like a Devilfish having, generally being taken alongside them. If you include the Devilfish, yes, that does dilute the effect a little bit, and so you're not getting quite this efficiency, but Breachers still a very solid choice either way. Vespid show up here as number 2. Vespid are extremely efficient against Primaris because of their weapons. Fire knives with plasma, again at close range, or not at close range. Fire Knives with Plasma against a unit that has full health. Strike Team with Fireblade. Pathfinders with Rail this time. Star Size with Flamers. And Broadsides with Rail again, coming through against the Primaris. So we see a few things enter the fray here in terms of Plasma Rifles and Rail loadouts being more effective because we have a more substantial chassis that we're firing against and also multiple wounds. That multiple wounds really does make these multi-wound shots make that much more of a difference. With aggressors, toughness 6, 3 up, save 3 wounds, we see fire knives of all types showing up as one of our best options. Again, this is something where the loadout doesn't really matter, but if we're firing against a unit that's full health, that's the important part. So fire knives shooting into something that is a full unit of aggressors is going to be really efficient. If we don't have that, then we're looking at broadsides with rail rifles. Breachers with the Fireblade, breachers with the Fireblade show up across the board. Again, they're just extremely efficient, taken independently. Pathfinders with rail rifles, Tiger Shark with an ion loadout, Crutox with a repeater. So Crutox show up a few times here, and I think it's interesting that they do have that efficiency in them. They're not something that you normally would think about. Certainly, their efficiency isn't something that is comparable to fire knives or broadsides or breachers in this case. It is farther down the list. The pure numbers are significantly lower, but in this ranking system, they do show up. Again, notably, this is not including things like detachment abilities, stratagems, things like that. So one of the reasons why Crutox often aren't considered in many different lists is because they don't interact with the detachment abilities unless you're taking things like auxiliary cadre, then there is an interaction and that improves their value. But if you're playing Mon-Ka, for example, this doesn't necessarily have that much utility, and the Mon-Ka ability enhances the utility of all these other units instead. So again, keep that in mind. And then Sunforged units. Sunforged units, bit of overkill, but certainly those fusion blasters do work against this profile. Moving on to some bigger boys here. We have Orc Boys at toughness 5, 5 up, save 1 wound. Breachers with Fireblade, Strike Team with Fireblade. This is a place where the Strike Team really does shine because of the 1 wound attribute and low save of Orc Boys. Toughness 5 means that the Strength 5 profile on the Pulse Rifle actually does fit, at least a little bit. Pathfinders with Ion Rifle, Star Size of all sorts. Fire Knives with missiles, firing against a unit that's at full strength. Tiger Shark and Vespid again. Tyrannid Warrior, toughness 5, 4 up, save 3 wounds. Breachers with Fireblade, Fire Knives at full strength. Vespid, Pathfinders with Rail, Strike Team, Broadsides with Rail, and Tiger Shark again. Moving on to some lighter vehicles, we have Broadsides at toughness 6, 2 up, save 8 wounds. Sunforged suits show up for the first time at the top of the list, and again, this makes sense given the large wound profile, high toughness, and good save that Sunforged would be a really effective unit here. Again, against something that is a vehicle, they're going to have a really high utility because of their Sunforged ability. So, yeah, makes sense that they're going to be good against something like a Broadside. Fire Knives with Plasma Rifles showing up here when they're firing at a unit that's at full strength. Broadsides with Rail, Hammerhead with Rail, Piranha with Fusion, Breachers, and a Tiger Shark. So lots of Rail and Plasma here, right? Star Weaver, toughness 6, 4 up, save 6 wounds. Sunforged, Fire Knives, Breachers, Broadsides, Tiger Shark, Crutox again. Again, the kind of that weird Crutox just kind of coming out of left field, and then Riptides show up again. This is one of the big changes with the increases to Riptide overcharging, Ion Accelerator overcharging, is that the Riptide actually does show up on these lists more consistently. And that's important because it used to be that you would consider Riptide mostly for its durability and flexibility. Yes, for its damage output, but that if you were really going just for damage output, you'd be considering these things at the top of the list. Here, the Riptide gets a little bit of a leg up that helps it be better than it was, frankly. Right, which is not a novel take, given that we're just adding strength to its weapon, but still, right? Like it does make a difference. Is the point I'm making? Looking against some thicker vehicles, things like Land Raiders, toughness 12, 2 up, save 16 wounds. Sunforge really are the option here. Hammerheads with Rail, Broadsides with Rail, Storm Surges with the with either the blast cannon or the driver cannon can do well here. They're all clustered together on the listing. Fire knives with plasma, Tiger Shark with rail, and a Sky Ray also showing up here. Against Lehman Russ, toughness 11, 2 up save, 13 wounds. Sunforged, broadsides, hammerhead, storm surge, fire knives, Tiger Shark, and Sky Ray. That is almost the same list. It's just switching the broadsides and hammerheads around because of the slight difference in toughness. If we look at things that have invulnerable saves, starting with the little guys like Zangors, toughness 4, 6 up save, 1 wound, and a 6++. We see strike teams, breachers, star size pathfinders with ion, Tiger Shark with burst, fire knives, and Vespid showing up. Terminators, toughness 5, 2 up save, 3 wounds with a 4++. Breachers, fire knives, Vespid, broadside pathfinders, Tiger Shark, and Crutox again. That Crutox just coming out of left field, right? But the rail really does show up here a little bit more consistently because of the thicker profile. Custodians at toughness 7, 2 up save, 4 wounds, and a 4++. We see fire knives with plasma. This is, I think, the first time that we've seen fire knives with plasma on the top here, which is cool. The broadsides with rail, Tiger Sharks with ion, Vespid, pathfinders, riptides, and breachers. Like breachers still doing work, but it's just not as much as some of these units that have decent volume, well, not really volume of fire, but decent strength, reliable multi-wound damage with a fair number of shots. Not a ton, but some, right? Certainly not the broadside with rail, right? That's not where we're getting tons of shots. But fire knives certainly can put out a few, right? And Vespid, Tiger Sharks, Pathfinders, Riptides all can put out a nice chunk of damage against a single unit of Custodians. Hive Tyrants, toughness 10, 2 up save, 10 wounds, 4++. Sunforged suits, making sense. Broadside with rail, hammerhead with rail, breachers with fireblade, fire knives, Tiger Shark, Pathfinders, rounding out the list there. Against some real big boys, Magnus the Red, toughness 11, 2 up save, 16 wounds, 4++. We see Sunforges, broadsides with rail, fire knives, if Magnus is at full wounds. Hammerhead, breachers, fire knives, Tiger Sharks with rail. Against a Wraith Knight, toughness 12, 2 up save, 18 wounds, and a 4++. Sunforged, broadsides, hammerhead, fire knives, Tiger Shark with rail, Storm Surge, and Sky Ray. And I think it's interesting that these two lists have a lot of the same components, but how different the ordering is aside from the first two. And then to wrap it all up, let's talk about some knights, some Imperial Knights. So toughness 12, 3 up save, 22 wounds, 5++. Sunforge, broadsides, hammerheads, fire knives, storm surge, sky ray, and tiger shark. And I think those are basically all the units I would think to run against this, right? Certainly the Sunforge are going to do a lot of work against knights, but really any of these are going to be really solid choices. So what does it all mean? Well, offensive efficiency is pretty intuitive in a lot of cases, right? The things that we envision as having strength or having a niche, having utility against certain targets do show up as being, on paper, the best choices for that unit. So that means that Games Workshop has done a nice job tuning this, and that within the codex at least, there is a fair bit of balance, and that they've carved out roles for different units effectively. So I think that's a sign of good design in general. And so they're priced to perform as intended. The crisis variants that we would expect to be good against infantry, like Starsides, are good against infantry. The crisis suits that we expect to be good against heavy infantry, like Fire Knives, are good against heavy infantry. The crisis suits that we expect to be good against vehicles, Sunforges, are good against vehicles, right? So that all works the way you would expect it to work. And generally the units that don't have a strong support role top the charts. Breachers, Broadsides, Crisis, Sky Rays, Tiger Sharks, all these are definitely damage dealer units that don't have a ton of support roles. The exception, of course, is Pathfinders. Pathfinders show up throughout the list, not at the top spot, but in a kind of a middling role, but they also have a really strong support role. So I think that's interesting that Pathfinders do have this efficiency built into them, but they also are good support units. Units like Stealth Suits, right? Stealth Suits used to show up here every so often. and now they just don't, right? Like the increase to stealth suit points cost totally takes them out of the running here, and that makes sense because they are taken now not as really an offensive unit, but as a utility unit. They are there for spotting, they are there for board control, they are not there to do damage, and so it makes sense that they should be pointed such that their utility is not in damage output, but instead with those other things. So I think that makes sense. Some of the limitations of this, right? Of course, we're not accounting for detachments. That's totally going to de-emphasize some units and emphasize others. We're not accounting for guiding, and so how you affect how you select units to guide and how you select targets to guide is going to change how efficient certain units are. And of course, mathhammer is not Warhammer. These are different things. You can do all the calculations you want. It's not going to A, make your dice roll the way you want them to, or B, make you make the right tactical choices to get a win. So it's not they're not the same thing, but this is a tool, right? Overall, I think that this suggests multiple viable builds, right? Like whatever detachment you want, there are going to be efficient units that lean into it. Even Krutok showed up a few times, right? So you have options, however you want to play, whatever build you want to use, there are ways that you can pick effective units or efficient units to fill that role, which I think is pretty cool. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and as always, thanks for watching and happy wargaming.